All right, it's time for another episode of Random Thoughts from a Crazed Mind, the worst video channel on YouTube. And today I'm going to talk about why it is that Israel is going to cease to exist voluntarily. Why Israel will cease to exist voluntarily. This is a video that I've been thinking about making for a month or so and tried to avoid it, but things are progressing so fast that today I am motivated to finally make the video on this wonderful spring day. So, you know what's going on in the world today. I'm not going to get into too much. I'm just going to get to the conclusion straight away. Israel is committing a, let's call it a pesticide, because certain words you can't say on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter. So they are conducting a pesticide. They've got some what they consider cockroaches that they're trying to get rid of. And in this process, Israel, unfortunately for itself, has unknowingly committed suicide. And so the end of Israel is now a certainty. Israel was always doomed to fail from the start for a variety of reasons, and this was all predicted before Israel was even established. I mean, the people who criticized the creation of Israel, like Albert Einstein, basically said what would happen, that ultimately the Israelis would become Nazis and they would wind up prosecuting the native population, and ultimately the world would turn on them and they would be run out of Israel or Palestine. And that's what's happening today. So the one fatal mistake that Israel and the United States have made in this whole process is that they never considered that Israel might lose. In spite of the fact that the United States just fought a war in Ukraine that they lost in dramatic fashion. And even still, they failed to recognize that they could lose in Israel. And that's what has happened. So the only question now is, how fast is Israel going to bleed out? Israel has committed suicide, and they're in the process of bleeding out. And so is this going to be a catastrophic failure of the state of Israel, in which it very suddenly collapses and the entire Arab world converges on Israel and wipes out the entire population? Or is this going to be a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year process at max, in which the Israelis simply leave? And that's what is ultimately going to happen, because the United States is not going to let it go so far that the Israelis wind up getting slaughtered by a population of another fatal mistake, 25-year-old angry Arabs with no jobs and a rage against Israel and the United States, and who have wanted nothing more than to destroy Israel for their entire lives. So Israel is a white supremacist society. It was built in after World War II, based on white supremacy, which was all the rage at that time. Nobody ever imagined that whites would not always reign supreme, and that Israel would not reign supreme over the Middle East, even though just from population alone you would know that that was impossible. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. And we have reached the point that Israel can no longer exist. I mean, even if somehow the Iranians give in to the United States and allow Israel to exist, um, people are going to wind up leaving on their own, and will gradually um, just become um, a state that just cannot sustain itself. And ultimately, they will turn it over to the Palestinians. And that's happening right now. I saw the other day that 1 million Israelis have already left Israel. This is just in, what, a month or so. There's 9 million Israelis. Already, a large proportion of the population has left. And the Iranians are just getting started. You know, the Iranians also predicted this. They said that if Israel ever attacked them, that they would drive the Israelis out of Israel. And they would leave on their own. That's what the Iranians said would happen. And that's what their plan is. Their plan is to push the Israelis out of Israel voluntarily, that they're just going to leave. That's why they're not just wiping Israel out the way the United States is trying to wipe out Iran. They're taking their sweet time and doing it very slowly so that they don't get nuked by the United States, and so that the pain just becomes so great for the United States and Israel, and that the collapse becomes inevitable, that they just decide to either evacuate Israel. It's kind of like Vietnam. I don't think we're going to get to that point. But once this whole thing gets settled in some way, Israelis are just going to leave. They don't have any other choice. And this is the fundamental problem of Israel also, is that it's a white supremacist state. And it's a tourist society. This is an upper middle class society that doesn't have any stake in Israel. They have passports to other countries. They can go all over the world and they will be accepted. And they'll get subsidies. I mean, just imagine if we move 9 million Israelis to the United States. Imagine what's going to happen. We're going to give them all sorts of subsidies, and, you know, free health insurance and everything else that Americans won't even have. But they're going to be heavily subsidized. And so they can just leave. Right? Now, if China attacks the United States and starts destroying the United States, we don't have anywhere to go. We're not going anywhere. You know, Ukrainians don't have anywhere to go. They're not an upper class society. They can't just fly off. You know, their elites can, and they are. Their elites are having a grand old time in Ukraine. They're having the best time of their lives. But Ukrainians got nowhere to go. All they can do is suffer through. That's not the Israelis' position. Israelis can go anywhere they want to go in Europe, and they will be welcomed with open arms, and they will be given subsidies by those governments. God knows what's going to happen after that. I mean, just imagine what Jewish life is going to be like in the world where they're getting subsidies that their own citizens aren't getting. So, you know, the long-term impacts of this whole Iran war are going to be spectacular. They're going to be exceptionally dramatic. I mean, Israel is going to go down as a Nazi society. And that's another reason that Israel is just going to voluntarily cease to exist. Israelis are not, Jews across the world are not going to want to be known as Israelis. That's going to be the same as being a Nazi. They're going to want to avoid that at all costs. They're going to deny that they were ever, you know, just like Americans with the Iraq War. People say, oh, well, you know, I was never really for that anyway. That's what Israelis say. Well, I was never really an Israeli. I never really believed in that. I moved here because I wanted more freedom. That's what the message is going to be. But, I mean, the way things are going now, there's going to have to be an evacuation of Israel. There's no way Israel is going to be able to stand up to this level of annihilation. And it's all being hidden from the Israelis. I mean, they will literally prosecute you for showing any amount of damage in Israel. The United States is banning satellite companies from showing the damage to their bases and to Israel itself. So all this stuff is being hidden. The massive amount of damage that's going on right now is being hidden from the public. And you could very easily get a collapse in which, collapses happen unexpectedly. Just like with gay rights or the NCAA paying college players, something that literally from one day to the next people thought was totally impossible, and then bam, it happened, and people couldn't believe it. It's just like that fast, and that's what happens with a collapse. And Israel, with its population, with its tourist society, this is a society that can just collapse overnight. And certainly there's going to be a collapse of Israel's society. It's just a question of how long does this take? Is it going to be something sudden that happens by the end of this week, potentially? Or is it something that happens over 20 years' time? But ultimately, Israel is going to leave. Palestine is going to be handed over to the Palestinians. And just like everywhere in the rest of the world, the Israeli elites will be protected. There'll be a deal made that they get to keep their assets. And of course, the Palestinians will want to prove that they can live with the Jews and that they're better people than the Jews, so they won't prosecute the Jews that choose to stay behind, the business owners and whatnot that have a vested interest in Israel. But Israel is a financialized country, just like the United States. They don't have any real assets. I mean, they live off the subsidies of the United States. And so if the United States doesn't support Israel, Israel can't exist. And so, I mean, you can see the long term. Americans are not going to be supporting Israel after this. They're going to be very, very angry at Israel and Israelis. And even if they get relocated here to the United States, I mean, they'll be given, a hero's welcome by the government, but people are going to be mad. So it's not a good situation for Israelis in Israel. But they're certainly getting what they deserve, and certainly brought it on themselves, and certainly have supported their own destruction, which is something we're doing here in the United States. So we can't really laugh at them too much, because we've done the same thing. So the world is changing fast, and I would be very surprised if Israel is not wound down, in the next 10 years, virtually completely, and then it'll become Palestine, and it'll be something. The United States will wind up buying it off. Buying off the Arabs again eventually, and China and Russia will have Iran, and the United States will have whatever it's able to get in the Middle East, and there'll be some deals made, and Palestine will be Palestine, won't be Israel anymore. The name of Israel will be probably almost completely forgotten by the human race in the next 50 to 100 years, and Israel will just cease to exist voluntarily. People will just leave, which they're already doing. So that's this episode of Random Thoughts from McCrae's Mind. Possibly the last episode ever. I may be in prison as a result of this video. Who knows? But so long, YouTube.